Good afternoon. My name is Alton Thompson. I am the Executive Director of the Association of Research Directors for the 1890 Land Grant Universities, and it's great to be on the panel with my colleagues Ramon Shange and Ali Fares. Considered an honor. The title of my presentation is The Climate Change and Environmental Justice, Ensuring Resilience for Underserved Communities. It's really based on a multi-state, 1890 multi-state climate project that both Rahman and Ali are members of. Also, I'm having some computer issues, so Jennifer's going to advance my slides for me. Next slide. This is sort of a presentation outline briefly. I'm talking about the climate crisis relative to underserved communities, environmental justice relative to Justice 40, which is a whole of government initiative, a little bit about the multi-state climate project, lived experience, which is an important part of our project, alignment with the National Climate Change Roadmap. I'll just show you that screen just as reference and context, not to go into it. A little bit about environmental justice, resiliency for underserved communities, and then some multi-state findings, and then a call for action. I'm not going to go over all the slides. Some of them are just a reference, but then we sort of move as accordingly. Next slide, Jennifer. Essentially, my focus is on really a thesis and three themes. The thesis is this decade is crucial for understanding climate change and the climate crisis. And the themes are the importance of science-based, data-driven agriculture practices and policies of climate science, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the relevance of environmental justice to underserved communities, and building resilience in underserved communities. In terms of the climate change in general, the Biden Harris administration has described climate change as an existential threat with issues in environmental justice, agriculture, transportation, energy, economic development, and prosperity. As we look at terms of being an existential threat, climate change has quickly became a focus of Congress. It has become a focus of the administration, industry, stakeholders, as well as academia. In terms of climate change in general, recent severe weather events has caused extensive damage globally, particularly in 1923. For example, in 1923, the United States experienced almost $93 billion in weather and climate disasters, the highest on record. These included 17 severe weather and hail events, 4 flooding events, 2 tropical cyclones, 2 tornado outbreaks, 1 wildfire, 1 winter storm, several major droughts, several heat waves throughout the country. In Phoenix, Arizona, July was the hottest month on record with an average of 103 degrees. Death Valley in California had a daily average on July 16th of 128 degrees. There were a record number of tornadoes in 2023, which caused about $6 billion in damage. All this information comes from NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And as I'm speaking, my home state of North Carolina, particularly western part of the state, areas of South Carolina and Georgia are still recovering from Hurricane Helene. And as I'm speaking now, Hurricane Milton will be making landfall on the Florida coast, somewhere between South of Sarasota and by nightfall. So the climate crisis is real. These are some examples of how the effect it is having. The climate crisis calls for urgent, large-scale mitigation and adaptation efforts for future damages and build resilience against its unavoidable impacts. Again, the looking particular focus on the third bullet, and the fourth bullet. Agriculture is really based on climate change, particularly in ag, is really need to be based on science-based, data-driven practices and policies that lower such things as greenhouse gas emissions, carbon sequestration, resilience in our food, agriculture, and forest systems against impacts of climate change. And the focus of this project is really for the 1890 universities. It's funded through our research program, addressing a broad range of climate change and mitigation issues in the 1890 region, which is really 18 southern, uh, 18 southern and border states. Next slide, please. Again, the Biden administration again is a focus of it, identified racial equity and addressing climate change as immediate priorities as going forward. Also, the Justice Ford Initiative, and really the Justice Ford Initiative is one of the requirements of Executive Order 14008, which aims to deliver 40% of all overall benefits of federal investments in climate and clean energy should be earmarked towards disadvantaged communities. This really is a call for action in terms of racial equity and addressing climate change. Is really a call for action for the Biden administration. And I think, again, the 1890 universities are in a unique position to contribute to these solutions because we have the academic credentials, we have the academic experience, and also which I will discuss a little later. Next slide, please. The proposal we were working on that Ali and Ramona are working on is really focused on looking at climate impacts and its consequences on persons in low income, underserved, and marginalized communities and communities of color. When we first developed this project, we did a literature review, and there was a gap in the literature on how climate change affect this clientele. Climate change is place-based. For example, in the Florida area and Southeast area, pretty much prone to hurricanes. And the Midwest is mostly tornadoes and windstorms. In the West, of course, is earthquakes and wildfires. Again, this is a multi-state, multidisciplinary proposal. And again, 1890s are unique because we're in a position because of our experience. For us, climate change is not a flavor of the month. We've been working with this audience for over 130 years. We have a unique opportunity to employ our current capacity as well as invest in new capacity as well as we go forward in this effort. Also, look at bullet two. This is an integrated project with both research, extension, and academics. Next slide, please. In terms of this slide, the lived experience, which is part of this project, there's a David. There's a well-written, peer-reviewed article that appeared in the Journal of Community Engagement and Scholarship. It really talks about how the 1890s should be engaged. They using transdisciplinary approaches and systems approach, and also talked about the lived experience. So I'll read that article later. The methodology as part of this proposal is looking at the lived experience. The lived experience is essentially a systematic approach to use to study, understand individuals' personal, subjective, lived experiences and interpretation for their own lives. The methodology is commonly used in qualitative research or phenomenology to explore how people perceive, make sense of, and narrate their experiences. In other words, that is, to view the world through the eyes of the stakeholders, to understand it from their perspective. This ethnographic approach involves deep, intensive interviews to engage citizens who have experienced interacting with persons they trust. That's why we're going to work with the Extension Service and Ramon to sort of identify persons that we need to participate in the study, basically assess the feelings and emotions about the experience related to climate change, their perceptions of the threats or the risks that climate change may cause them, and also determining the readiness of underserved communities with uncertainty of climate change. Again, the lived experience is important because 1890 has been working with this audience, low income, limited resource, small producers, and communities of color for over 130 years. And the 1890 Extension Program is well equipped to help identify persons to interview in this project. And also the lived experience of the researchers as well. Next slide. Again, lived experience gives us a deep understanding of how individuals navigate their worlds, how to make decisions, and how they're affected by various factors. This will really give us a rich, unique data set as we go about looking at the impact of climate change in low-income communities. Again, it's a safe space. Then the third one is key is trust. As I mentioned to Ali Shanga earlier, I'm at an AI conference in Pittsburgh, and they're talking about trust is also an important variable. So that's why I want to pick, and as we collect our data, use extension agents whom they trust to take a non-probability sample of farmers and community residents to collect the primary data for this project. Next slide, please. Briefly, these are the goals of the project. We have 4 goals for this multi-state project. The goal 1 is soil health. Goal 2 is about water security, which Ali Forest is one of the leads for. Goal 3 is dealing with environmental justice and climate equity. And goal 4 deals with policy. Briefly, so these are the goals of the project. You see how all 19 institutions are participating in this project. But environmental justice, as we define it, refers to the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income. Uh, it also talks about relative to environmental laws, policies, and decision-making process. So the goal is that no group, especially historically marginalized or underserved communities, disproportionately bears the burden of environmental hazards, or denied access to environmental benefits such as clean air, water, and healthy lifestyle. Really looking at disproportionate impacts, access to resources, and the impact of climate change. Next slide. This is just the National Climate Roadmap. This is sort of the framework for future investment in climate science research. I wanted to use a reference because even though the multi-state project started before this roadmap was finished, our project aligns very well with the 7 themes and the 9 principles of this roadmap. In 1890, scientists was also involved in this roadmap. So these are the 7 themes. The one that's particular for this project is participatory research process and also socioeconomic and policy research analysis. I wanted to show you this as a guide. Then the next slide deals with the guiding principles. Equity and justice is one of the guiding principles, and that's sort of the focus of these presentations. But all of these 9 guiding principles are inherent in our multi-state project. Next slide. This just shows the overlap of the guiding principles of the National Climate Change Roadmap with our project itself. Next slide. Essentially, this is one of the projects was funded by USDA NIFA, the AFRI program. This was a project on environmental justice area, and only one project was funded. And the project was awarded to North Carolina A&T State University to look at environmental justice for low-income communities and communities of color. When you show that and the Kathleen Liang is one of the PIs on our project as well. Next slide. Essentially, what Kathleen want to do is basically understand how equity and distribution of both research investments and science outcomes in the four AFRI priority areas, and she's basically using a graphic probability bullet too. She's really using a graphic probability model to look at statistics interface with GIS to look at how the research are being invested in limited resource communities. Next slide.
Alton, just jump in that we're hoping to get on to the next speaker fairly soon. So I know we've got lots. Okay.
Okay. Move on. Next slide. Let's look at this slide. Then we're going to skip to the end. This is like one of the some selected findings. This is one Southern University. The first bullet is they did look at 2 parks, one frequently by African Americans and one frequently by Caucasians. You see that in all 3 bullets, in terms of the tree cover, the canopy cover, the carbon storage, the carbon storage per year per acre, as well as the oxygen per ton per acre per year. There's a 2 sigma difference in the African American communities and the Caucasian communities in general. Skip about the next 4 or 5 slides, Jennifer. And I guess as I conclude is one of the things to ensure community resilience in underserved communities, to look at infrastructure development, to look at financial tools and insurance, to look at education and capacity building. Next slide. To look at our community-led adaptations, access to climate information, as well as sustainable agriculture practices. It's how you really ensure resilience in low-income communities. Next slide. Next slide. So that's sort of the end of the presentation, but essentially, as I conclude, climate change is really an urgent issue that proportionally affects underserved communities who are often more vulnerable and least equipped to adapt to impacts. Again, as I mentioned, by taking these actions, we ensure that the fight against climate change is just and inclusive, leaving no communities behind. Addressing climate inequity is not only a matter of justice, but also essential for a sustainable, resilient future. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Alton. That was a very comprehensive overview. I'm guessing that some people on the call, like me, until I saw your first presentation some months ago, had no idea about the breadth and scope of work that you guys are doing. Are there any questions? I see some compliments in the chat. I do not yet see any questions. I've got one quick one for you then, and then we'll move on while we're preparing the next one. So one of the things you emphasized a lot about sort of trust in your relationships within the 1890 region with who you work with. So one of the things that's, I think, particularly interesting for climate work is a tendency for people of color to care more about climate on the one hand than, just looking at national polling than the average American. And yet on the other hand, for rural people to be more conservative about this topic. So I wonder if you have any just kind of comments on how you talk about climate change with your audiences and how you kind of approach the agenda. You seem to be very, some of us have trouble in some of our states figuring out how to gain entry into the conversation even around this topic. So how about with the people you work with primarily?
The key thing in the 1890s, the extension agents are really trusted persons in the community. But also when we do climate change, we're not talking about, we sort of taking climate change, looking at its component parts. We may talk about the excessive heat. We may talk about heat. We may talk about windstorms. We may talk about flooding. We may talk about drought. We may talking about have your crop rotation changed in it. So we're gonna sort of break it down into component parts, such that also as we collect these data, we're also gonna say now, when we collect this data, we're gonna give you the results back to help you improve your operations. So you'll get something in return for it, and really then trust them with the confidentiality and anonymity pieces. You'll get something back, but we're asking them specific questions about how it affect their lives specifically. That's how we're gonna do it.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think in the interest of hearing from our two other presenters, we'll move along to the next one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Dr. Thompson and Dr. Ferris, for sharing the space with me. So I hope I live up to you all's great work that you're doing. I'm here in particular to share what 1890's extension is doing in the space of climate and how we're addressing climate challenges. I am Raymond Shange, Extension Administrator at Tuskegee University, as well as Vice Chair for Association of Extension Administrators. So just a quick overview of how the presentation. I will go into a little bit of context and background of why 1890's extension impacts how it impacts climate resilience. Then talk a little bit about national climate extension organizing around climate and how that has begun to influence the 1890s. Then we'll talk some more particulars about our first convening in the 1890s extension regarding climate and how we interface with researchers, as Dr. Thompson mentioned. All right. So I'm not going to go too much in. These first slides are going to be a lot of uh, maps, a few graphs. But I will say, if you want to go more into some of these graphics, they are published on a website of the Carbon Integrated Sustainability Center, which is the Center of Excellence at Tuskegee University. And all you have to do is type in CISCHC81.org. First issue of State of African Americans in the Black Belt, which is one of our publications, looks into the historic Black Belt counties. And as you can see, that's where primarily our 1890 institutions lie. If there's any one of our colleagues from Central State, please forgive me for using this outdated map. We do have colleagues now in Central State and Ohio as well. So 19 institutions, 18 states. We're very lucky in Alabama to have two 1890s, Alabama A&M and Tuskegee University. So why is this work so important to the communities that we work in? The communities that we work in are economically depressed and challenged in other ways that include other social indices. But I wanted to show here the distressed counties, not just in which the institutions are located, but in the counties that each of the extension programs work. And they range anywhere, this is only 10 of the 19, but I just wanted to choose these 10 to show that range from 100% of the counties to 53% of the counties that we serve. So the people do need and continuously support the extension work in those communities. So here's another map about changes in energy expenditures. And you can see the Southeast and Southwest is projected to be heavily impacted. If you overlay that on the fact that most of these communities are economically distressed, you see that we're heading for not only climate disasters, but other social and economic disasters in these communities. So we also, and again, this will be in actually this year's upcoming publication in the State of African Americans in the Black Belt, where one of our researchers goes a little bit deeper into some of these issues. But there's also energy burdens and projected extreme heat days that are in the communities that we work in the 1890s. So those of you that are familiar with extension, you understand that a lot of our work that lies ahead is not just in agricultural and natural resources, but also in the family and consumer sciences, youth development, as well as community economic development. All right. So that's a little bit of context as to why the work is so important that we're taking on. I would say one of the I guess movements or events that really kind of struck a nerve with some of our colleagues in the 1890s community was the organizing that ECOP, the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy, and the Climate Program Action Team, some of the actions that they began to take around organizing around climate change was very influential in the beginning of our work as well. And that first climate convening was held last year in Tucson, Arizona, bringing colleagues from 1994s, 1890s, and 1863s to come and very much kind of dig into climate issues and begin to look at developing a climate action plan for part of the extension system across the country. Some of the comments that we heard coming out of this was one of the most impactful meetings that folks had been a part of, where 1862, 1890, and 1994 partners sat around the table sharing their expertise as well as their interest in climate. So coming out of that, that team began to, the core team of the program action team began to start to look at some of the work that we needed to then, that was more, I would say, kind of we were taking a cascading look at some of the issues and some of the expertise. And they started to develop that into logic models or plans of action for the entire system. And you can actually look this up. Things on Extension Foundation's website. But the Climate Action Plan has been released this year. And it's an excellent document that I think can actually help individual agents, but also extension programs to align themselves with this national movement and extension towards climate resilience. So the four models that came out of that, and that you can see in the document, is expanding climate smart policy and policymaker engagement, fostering climate resilient communities, implementing a climate response, and advancing 21st century community well-being for all. And as I said earlier, if not in the titles, if you begin to look at the models, you begin to see all of the program areas of extension reflected in the work and the future work that we're going to have to engage in order for the betterment of all of our communities. So that being one major influence, but another major influence being conversations with Dr. Alton Thompson, as well as the multi-state research project kind of lifting off and beginning to take form. We began to have some structured conversations in extension that were actually supported by the Association of Research Directors at their past two conferences, led by Dr. Ray McKinney as well. And we began to have internal conversations at some of our AEA meetings of what exactly AEA could do around climate change. I would say one of the huge things that kickstarted this was the NRCS Climate Smart Commodity Grants that were awarded to a lot of our institutions. And a lot of that work is community as well as farmer-oriented work. So that actually began to really push our extension programs to start to have some of those conversations about climate, not just with our farmers, but with our communities. After that, after having those conversations, a core group of us that attended the ECOP committee decided that, we wanted to have our own convening, as well as start to develop some plans and some goals for us internally, the 1890s, that align not only with the ECOP, but also aligned with Association of Research Directors in your project as well. So Dr. Thompson talked a lot more in depth about this than I am, but that 1890 climate convening, this was a hallway conversation that actually turned into, I would say, a large scale event. The technical committee for ARD meets once a year, and as I was beginning the plan to have our extension colleagues participate, I realized that having them in the same space as the researchers, as we're beginning to develop our identity and our goals in terms of a climate task force, will be very helpful for us. At the convening, the researchers, their technical committee usually has a report out day, and then they have a planning day. So that day that they reported out, extension actually met amongst ourselves, and the researchers reported out. But then strategically on that second day, we sat with them in the same room and looking at this next year and how that's going to look, integrating research and extension into that project. And I think we had some really good conversations. I didn't participate in all of them, but that Justice and Policy group was a lively group, and I think we've got some good things planned this year that's really going to engage community and farmers around the project. And I do want to shout out my colleague, Janine Woods, who's Associate Extension Administrator at Virginia State University, who was also nominated and voted as a co-lead technical team, which will keep that strong tie between research and extension as we move forward together. So there was another component to this that I didn't mention earlier. In 2022, we also at Tuskegee University host the Center of Excellence for Farming Systems, Rural Prosperity, and Economic Sustainability. And through a partnership with EPA, we decided to deliver our first Environmental, Energy, and Economic Justice Academy. And the Environmental Justice Academy is something that has been done for years in EPA Region 4 and other regions as well. But we decided that, we could utilize this as a great opportunity for training extension professionals, and also bringing them together in the same space as community organizers and community leaders of community-based organizations to be trained together in environmental, economic, and energy justice. And that economic piece is a piece that we added as well. And that's led by Dr. Gloria Tanubu at Tuskegee University. She's been a major player in helping get this off the ground. And we just brought in our second cohort during our convening. They didn't get as much time to spend with us, but we did spend time at meals together. But they were hard at work, starting before us on that first day and ending after us, as they had their first session at the convening. And this year has almost doubled in size in terms of its participation. We're really looking forward to the outcome of that this year, this spring in 2025. And then for extension, what we did at that meeting, especially the first meeting, was establish our central task force. We have about 20 members from about 7 institutions. We started discussing existing programs within the different states and identifying overlap and potential collaboration so we can have, and as well as identifying key partners and setting preliminary goals. We also had a focus group meeting with the 1890 Extension Disaster Education Network at that meeting as well, which I think is going to be a great partner with us going forward as well. So here's that core task force. I definitely want to make sure that they get recognized for dedicating their time. We definitely look to grow ourselves, but this core group, I would say, are the folks that are going to ride and die with us. They definitely gave up a lot of their time to be there those 2 days with us. And we're really excited, looking forward to how we can actually engage the entire 1890s and greater extension community. So this is just a little diagram of how we are projecting ourselves to move forward. We're directly related to the ECOP Climate Program Action Team. I participate in that. As I stated earlier, Dr. Woods is now on the technical leadership for the ARD Multi-State Climate Project. I'm an administrative advisor there as well. And then we are actually definitely following that climate convening where I met David and had a great conversation with him about collaboration going forward. So we definitely look to have multiple people participate in NECI going forward as well. And I already spoke about one relationship of 1890 Center of Excellence to the task force. We hope to get participation from the other centers as well. And then we definitely want to connect ourselves with USDA, the Regional Climate Hubs, NIFA, NRCS, Rural Development, and Forest Service as well. And then also national and regional nonprofit organizations and foundations. And one of the things that we are doing currently in the traditional program areas in AEA is developing shared outcome measures. That way we can have more of a collective impact. And we did already start going through those shared measures and pulling out ones that were related to climate. So we are definitely looking to become a repository for the 1890s extension work that's happening in the area of climate. So simple outputs that we identified is trainings for extension workshops, training for extension professionals, workshops for community, some conferences that already exist that could be adapted to highlight and showcase some of the extension work that is going on. And then also publications and media. As I mentioned earlier, this year's issue of the State of African Americans in the Black Belt will be solely focused on climate change. I really look forward to that being released in November at the Professional Agricultural Workers Conference. That team normally has a session where they present, and then we actually will release that publication there as well. And some of the shared outcomes that and goals that we decided on, we will have professional development that will be a la the Environmental Justice Academy, but we're looking at some trainings that are already happening in some of our other institutions and expanding those to the region. Also, as I mentioned before, those shared measurable outcomes And then also becoming a clearinghouse, a database for climate-related impacts and success stories for underserved communities in the Southeast. And also looking towards different funding opportunities that can drive us towards innovation across the region, and extension, and also integrated research and extension as well.
So Raymond,
Yes, I'm finishing up now.
Is that it? Okay,
that's it.
Just
that's
checking
it. So,
in.
yeah, just want to thank my AA colleagues, our executive director, Dr. Essel, the executive team, Dr. Williams, Donna Richardson, Mark Lattimore, and to my partners that have actually helped in the research and extension partnership, Dr. Zobadiah and Jue, Dr. Jimmy Woods, and Dr. McKinney, who has helped facilitate a lot of this conversation earlier. That's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
And thank you again, once again. I think all of us ought to be very impressed about the depth and extent of work and organization you all have pulled together, especially, in a fairly short time period, even with the deeper roots that you talked about. So are there any questions? Let me just check the Q&A. I don't see any open ones there. I'm going to have one if no one else does for you. There may be some coming later. So, for those, so when you're talking about sort of the partnerships which we're starting to work on, what's the right way? This may be for all of you, but I'll address it to you, particularly with an extension. How do we, do we think of the 1890s? Should we, who are not from an 1890s, should we be thinking of the 1890s as national in scope or primarily regional, given the maps that you showed about where you're located? And, in what context should we think? I'm going to assume in some ways we should think about you as a national part of the system, part of a national system, in other ways regionally, but maybe you can articulate that a little better for the rest of us.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's definitely national. I think even in Dr. Thompson's presentation, he was mentioning that experience, that kind of experience-based research and engagement. So I'll say this: we have partners nationwide, right? I have partnerships and programs with community-based organizations in Chicago, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Seattle. These things have come out of the familiarity with the communities in the area as well. And I think that to a degree, we don't have to be isolationists in those in that regard. We can actually help to facilitate more communication between those communities and some of the 1862s in that area as well. So definitely national in scope as well, because of the network that we have communities around the nation.
Music to my ears. Thank you.
I would say, if I may, that
Yes.
even goes beyond national. If we know that more than 80% of the farmers globally are limited resources, small farmers, I think the issues that the 1890 deal with has more also relevant at the national level, at the international level as well.
So Dr. Ferris, I might add to that, because not everybody would know this, but there is also within Extension another organization called the Globalizing Extension Innovation Network, which some people may have heard of, which is trying to think very hard about how what we do in a globalized world here, how what we do here in the U.S. relates to the reality that we're all in a world with climate just being one of the many global forces that we're all dealing with. So maybe we could move on. That's a good transition to your presentation then. Is it set up and ready to go?
Yes, I just want to thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this seminar, and also the opportunity from David and also Jennifer for this opportunity to really feature some of the great work that our 1890 institution are being doing at this level about this important topic about climate change. So I'm Ali Ferris. I'm an endowed professor of water security, water energy, food nexus at Prairie View A&M University, which is in Texas. I'd like to talk to you today about leveraging AI and innovation to empower future leaders in resource-limited communities. Okay, if my slide can go to the next one, that would be helpful. Okay, so the outline of my presentation, I'm going to have an introduction about the challenges of limited resource communities as it relates to the topic, also the water, energy, food nexus, and why is it and how it is relevant to the discussion. What is the role of AI and innovation in addressing challenges related to this topic? And though also, how can we empower future leaders through education and outreach? And at the end, a summary and conclusions. So the objectives of my presentation would be to highlight the integration of AI and innovation in addressing resource challenges, and also to discuss how training future leaders can make a significant impact in resource-limited communities. So some of the challenges of limited communities are highlighted here. Low access to resources. These communities encounter significant barriers in accessing essential resources and services in the water, food, and energy, health, and education, such as, it's very prevalent to know food deserts and health deserts in these communities. This restricted access inhibits individual and community development and complicating responses to public health issues. Also, inadequate infrastructure and funding contributes to a persistent cycle of deprivation. Another challenge is socioeconomic challenges. These communities often face high unemployment and low income levels. These conditions lead to systemic inequalities and hinder economic stability. Limited economic diversity and amplifies vulnerability to market changes, complicating growth efforts. So climate change exacerbate all these challenges they have been facing. And these communities are more vulnerable to climate change than other communities. So increased vulnerability are especially vulnerable, these communities, to climate change impacts due to their reliance on natural resources and low adaptive capacity. Challenges such as flooding and reduced crop yield threaten livelihoods, making adaptation difficult due to socioeconomic instability. And more often, you have multiple or complicating disaster that hit these communities. Mitigating strategies for climate change. Addressing climate vulnerability requires an integrated solution involving infrastructure and community engagement. Also, effective strategy must be context-specific, focusing on the unique challenges of limited resources communities. Building resilience through local participation can enhance the adaptive capacity of these communities. So I'm going to talk right now about the water, energy, food nexus and its relevance to sustainability and empowerment of limited resources community. So this graph shows basically the water, energy, and food, and the interlinkages between them. You need water for food, like irrigation crop, food processing, etc. You need food for energy, like agrochemicals, food processing, farming, and you need biofuel, for example, for energy to produce energy. The same thing, you need energy for power. For example, fuel production to water distribution, to heating and cooling, etc. But also you need water for energy, etc. So there are interlinkages between these different three components within them, but also they are influenced by climate change, population growth, and also governability, how to govern these and commodities. So that's where we talk about water security, energy security, and food security. So as you can see, dealing with issues of water by itself on a silo has not been productive. So we need to deal with the water issue, energy issue, and the food in an access approach. So that's why the water energy represent a critical interconnected system, essential for sustainability, where each element influences the other and impact the global challenges, climate change, food security, etc. So sustainable, there are lots of, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the 17 goals of Sustainable Development Goals by the UN. Number 6 is clean water and sanitation. Number 7 is affordable clean energy. So also about food, there is also food security as well. So these three topics involve several of the SDGs of the UN. Empowering through action. So community engagement, involving local community in water management and their food security and their energy security is essential. Also innovative solutions, implementing technology such as smart irrigation, renewable energy in agriculture and homes empower farmers to enhance their productivity and sustainability and reduce, for example, residential energy costs. So how can we transform limited resource community through technology? As we mentioned, empowering them, local solution, research-driven approaches, and community engagement, as it has been discussed in the previous couple of slides. So let's talk about empowering future leaders through education and outreach, an importance of historically Black colleges and university and leadership development. And also, we'll talk about some outreach activities my program have been doing and developing some leadership skills as part of our land grant program here at Prairie View A&M University. So empowering future leaders through education and outreach. Importance of HBCU in leadership development, diversity and representation. 80% of HBCU students are first-generation college students, enhancing access to education. HBCU represents nearly 20% of African American undergraduates, increasing diversity in academia. Specifically, the land grant program of HBCU has also a special impact on the nation, with over 50,000 students trained in agriculture, education, and extension services, focusing on practical community-based learning for local challenges. And my previous colleagues who talked about extension, they are in every single county in the nation. So where you have also in our area, in the 1890 southeastern area, we are also, as it's shown in the previous talk, represented in most of the counties and counties that are really need the services with limited resources. Community engagement and service. 60% of HBCU alumni engage in community service, benefiting underprivileged population. Also, partnership with local organizations creates service learning opportunities. There are transformative influences. Empower students to advocate for social justice and sustainability. And the first speaker discussed that in detail. Alumni often take leadership role in local government and nonprofits. Initiatives in urban agriculture and renewable energy showcase commitment to local solutions. Policy, advocacy, and economic development. HBCUs advocate for equitable access to resources, serve as incubator for entrepreneurship, helping start local businesses, etc. So I'm going to talk right now about outreach activities designed to engage students in AI and sustainability topics and developing leadership skills. One project that is funded through NEFA capacity building, and no, NEFA main funding is called Get Ag Smart, Building Capacity in Smart Agriculture Technology for Underserved Community. This is a joint project between Prairie View and Texas A&M University. This project will enhance the training of underrepresented students in agriculture disciplines. Also provide training for agriculture professionals on advancing agriculture technology through informal learning objects developed by youth participants. So we are dealing with, and so this graph or schematic summarize the activities of the project. Basically, we are dealing with smart technology in agriculture as the center, dealing with issues of post-harvesting agriculture production, human and animal nutrition, water resources, and food and feed through using these innovative technologies like sensing and IoT, big data analytics, modeling, and virtual reality, and how to train students in understanding this interaction between ag and these new technologies. So a part of this project, we gave lectures to non-agriculture students. So this was given lectures given last year to college station students, the educational career awareness of the impact of lecturing. So to undergraduate students, the objective was to analyze climate smart agriculture students' knowledge outcomes from giving them presentation about climate smart agriculture. So we give presentation, we test the student before and after, and we see the impact of this on their. So this analysis found that the intervention or the lectures enhanced all student knowledge about climate smart agriculture innovations and career opportunities. However, the impact was higher with underrepresented students more than other students from the interventions. Second finding, the intervention elevated interest in pursuing climate smart agriculture career and post-graduation as well. So the project has developed outlet for current knowledge through transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary and problem-solving learning for all interested students. So another project funded also through capacity building, this one is AI-based programming for advancing research and education and extension activity and precision agriculture at Prairie View A&M University. So the goal of this project was to strengthen research, student training, and extension capacity at Prairie View in AI and remote sensing to deal with crop stress. So it has dissemination component, training component, and of course, research components. This is the
just again as a heads up, where we have a couple more minutes, and then
sure.
Some people are going to have to leave. So
Yep. Well, I will wrap it up. So this is the experimental of the two experiment. This is the graph showing the two experiment. These are data collection by students, postgraduate, in all these technologies, AI-based and CO2 emissions and, oh, I'm sorry, what's happened? I think I accidentally hit my, sorry, I'll be, okay. Let me go back, finish. So we have organized field demonstration. In this case, for example, we have PhD and graduate students from UT Austin, undergraduate students from PV and Texas A&M, and these are K through 12 through Ag Discovery. All came in one day and at the same field. You can see multi-generation learning about smart agriculture, limited climate change by our group in our site. So, and of course, okay, so this is, again, also similar field days and demonstrations. We also have REEU funded by NEFA also projects where we demonstrate for the students how to use technology also to solve water issues. We engage community through field day programs, this showing the activities that we conducted as part of that field day. Also, again, field day, this is part of the another field day demonstration that we have. Of course, this is some of the colleagues that participated in the project. We also developed some extension bulletins. This is a video I'll pass. These are extension bulletins that we developed based fact sheets that are available, that we use as a part of our outreach program. Communicating with local TV here about droughts. In conclusions, AI technology innovation offer transformative solution for the challenges faced in limited resources communities. These innovations can directly impact sustainability, climate resilience, and community well-being. We can make a difference, whether through supporting existing initiatives or replicating these solutions in our communities. Let's work together to create lasting change by fostering innovation in the face of challenges. And this, of course, we have to thank our team. These are my team and colleagues working with us. And we cannot end without acknowledging the support from NIFA, USDA NIFA, for their capacity building and other funding, also the NSF and AgriLife. With that, I'll be happy to entertain any of your questions if you have any.
Thank you so much once again. I really wish we had a whole hour from now to delve into a little more discussion and dialogue about this. I know it's a very packed program, and some people have had to leave already, but if there are any questions, I'm not seeing any right off. Once again, since I always have questions, I'm going to ask you one though. So I appreciate and relate and applaud sort of the focus you had in leadership development and in your presentation. I wonder to what extent you think about there's a connection between what you're trying to do there and something that we're hearing more and more about in the climate and energy context, about the relationship between leadership development and leadership training and job readiness and job preparedness in the context of the need for a different set of skills particularly for students coming out, but also adult training, people coming out of, having to make a transition in a different economy, basically. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think I can tell you that our college is on the lead on this effort. We developed a new MS degree program in natural resource environmental science that deals with where we teach all these components. We are in the process of developing a PhD program on water, energy, food nexus, and sustainability, where we emphasizing some of these principles that we are talking, emphasize more on the training, the professional on the job of the future. So they need skills that the conventional or curricula didn't offer them. So we have to modify our curricula to address those future and current needs.
All right. Have a great day.
Just one last quick thing, just in case there's a quick answer. Are you connecting AI in the work you're doing with machine learning models in any way?
Yes. I assume the question is for me, right?
Yes.
Yes, we do. In fact, we do some. We have published some work on using machine learning and analyzing like the connection between CO2 emission and temperature and soil moisture and other factors that influence that particular thing. And
okay, thank you so much. And with that, once again, thank you so much. Round of appreciation from everybody, maybe mutual group hug as Jenny suggested, and I hope everybody has a fabulous afternoon. Okay, thanks again. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Now.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.